I have an interesting background because I'm a technology investor. And so I invested in Apple, Amazon, Facebook, and Google and made a fortune in those companies more than a decade ago. I'm
Yeah.
also an entrepreneur. I started a dozen different things. I launched alarm.com, which is a multi-billion dollar publicly traded company. And I launched angel.com, which was like an Alexa competitor or Surrey competitor 20 years ago, and I sold it for more than $100 million. And I created my own company, MicroStrategy. So I know what it's like to be a tech entrepreneur. I know it's like to be a technology investor. I also have run a publicly traded company for 20 years. So I have a pretty good sense of what it's like to be an institutional investor or an institutional public company officer, and what it's like to deal with securities regulators and bankers and large pools of institutional capital. Because I've got that background, I think it's helpful, and I see my role as explaining to institutional investors Bitcoin, because it used to be, before last year, it was mainly retail investors that understood Bitcoin and institutional investors didn't. So I communicate to institutional investors, but I'm also communicating to investment bankers, people that are institutional traders and in the securities business. And also, our job is to communicate to auditors and the legal profession and other kinds of professionals. So we're explaining to credit rating agencies what Bitcoin is, and we're explaining to all the big four accountants what Bitcoin is.
Yeah.
Sometimes my job is to communicate to politicians. And then, of course, so I'm bringing Bitcoin and what it is to all of those constituencies. And then my other job, I think, is to explain to the retail investor and all of the OGs in the crypto industry and the Bitcoin ecosystem, explain to them how you would view this if you were running a publicly traded company, or how you would view this if you had $50 billion in institutional capital to invest, right? And because everybody doesn't quite understand everybody else's point of view. And I think that when you communicate and explain things with different metaphors and from people's different point of view, it helps everybody to understand the potential, and it helps them to understand, like, sometimes people think this is scary. Sometimes people in the retail business that don't understand institutions, they'll read a headline like such and such intends to regulate crypto, and they think that's bad. But when the regulator says, oh, we have no intention of banning it, but you have to pay your taxes on it, that's not bad. It's bad if you're a crypto anarchist and you hate the idea of ever paying taxes. But if you're a Bitcoin investor, or if you're a long-term holder and the regulator says that, what that means is that they've given a green light to $250 trillion worth of investors to buy it. Oftentimes, the news is interpreted negatively, but it's actually positive. And sometimes some things that are positive are negatives. And you have to explain to people, how the rest of the world may see it. And then they make their own decision based upon their worldview. But I think communication is at a premium at this stage in the development of the life cycle of Bitcoin.
What do you try to explain here? Like, do you think, because obviously Bitcoin has increased much more than gold in the last few years in that, but in the long term, can people actually compare gold with Bitcoin?
Your life savings. You have all the money you've saved your entire life. It's a stack of money. It's sitting in the corner, however much money you have. And what you'd like to do is you'd like to keep it. So in the 19th century, you would have bought gold with it. Gold was the long-term store of value. It was a form of property, but it was mobile. Another thing you could do with it is you could buy land with it. Another thing you could do it is you could buy a building. Another thing you could do with it is you could buy livestock, a bunch of cattle or horses. You could buy a bunch of corn. You could buy a bunch of oil, or you could buy, all of those are forms of property. So gold is, for thousands of years, thought of as a long-term mobile or portable, semi-portable. It's portable for someone with, $50,000 worth of gold. If it's $50 million worth of gold, it starts to be pretty heavy, and then you can't move it around.
Before we continue, help us clicking that YouTube like button and subscribe now to our channel. This shows the algorithm that you valued this information. And it helps us spread that message. Sharing is caring. And now, let's continue.
Bitcoin can be thought of as digital gold, or more generally, digital property, or most generally, digital energy. And
Yeah.
bear with me there. So I take my money and I convert it into gold, and I have a pile of gold bars. The good thing is it's hard to make any more. The bad thing is it's heavy, and someone can put a gun to my head, shoot me, and take my gold bars. The other bad thing about gold is the gold miners make more gold. So the half-life of economic energy of your life force stored in gold is about 30 years. Every 30 years, the gold supply is going to double. And in 100 years, it's going to double and double and double again. So you're definitely going to lose 85% of your wealth over 100 years, unless some criminal steals your gold or the government seizes your gold. And of course, over 100 years, 95% of the time, someone's going to steal your gold. That's what happened in the 20th century. The half-life of Bitcoin is forever. The half-life of gold is 30 years. So one of them is durable. The other thing is I can move it to any of 100,000 counterparties anywhere in the world at the speed of light. So if you think of it as digital gold, you're like, well, it's safer, more secure, indestructible, and without any mass, so easy for me to move around. And that makes it more valuable than gold. If gold is worth $10 trillion in the world, then digital gold must be worth 20 trillion. But bear with me. It's important that we don't stop there. I mean, if I just gave you virtual gold versus $1 billion of real gold is 30,000 pounds. $1 billion of Bitcoin is 0 pounds, and I can move it with my finger, right? Speed of light.
Yeah.
You can see why it's better. But if we start to think of it as digital property, what if I took that $1 billion of gold and I made it $1 billion of buildings, and I bought up all the buildings in Istanbul?
Yeah.
Okay, now I own property.
I wish.
Okay, now why is that better? Well, in one way it's better because I can rent the land, or I can rent the building and generate yield on it. So maybe I buy up houses, maybe I buy up warehouses. I have some property with some income stream. That's the good. The bad part about it is the maintenance fee. I got to paint it. An earthquake might knock it down. It might burn. I get taxed on it, property tax. And if I have to leave the country, I can't move the $1 billion of buildings out of Istanbul. So it's not portable. So having said all that, most people that store their wealth and stay wealthy, they don't do it with gold. The rich families in the world do it with property. They own blocks of New York City. They probably the rich people in Turkey, they own a lot of buildings and a lot of land, right? You never met a rich person that didn't own buildings and land, right? No. So it turns out that, if gold is a $10 trillion market, property is more like a $250 trillion market. Let me come back to what is Bitcoin. Well, if Bitcoin is just digital gold, then it's $1 billion slab of gold, and it must be worth more than gold. So instead of a $10 trillion market, it's a $20 trillion market. But if Bitcoin is property, then it replaces everybody's second home and all their commercial real estate and all the land they invested in to store their life savings. And now it's not a $20 trillion thing, it's a $100 trillion thing. And if it's energy is same as money. Money is half of everything. Energy is, it's like the way the economy works is you provide me with a product, an iPhone or service, a good or a service, or you give me property, a house, or you give me a party, or you give me a car, right? And so I'm buying those with money, and the economy is using the money to backhaul the energy to convert it back into matter. And what is service? Service is work. Work, matter becomes energy, and they go back and forth. And if you think about Bitcoin like that, you realize that, the obvious thing is it becomes digital gold. And the next thing is it becomes digital property. And finally, it becomes digital energy. And digital energy is money, but it's so much more powerful than the concept of money or currency. People have in their head these ideas of money and currency full of all sorts of political beliefs and biases. So I think if you thought of it as just pure digital energy, at that point you realize, well, that's worth $500 trillion.
What to do in such a situation? Inform yourself and keep your financial education strong. We from the Compact Group offer our loyal subscribers a free educational portal with first-hand monetary, financial, and economic knowledge. Enter our invite-only Insider Club by clicking the link below. You will get access to first-class information far earlier than the rest. We have prepared a special deal for all our members, where you can access a giant pool of Robert Kiyosaki's financial wisdom for just $1. To find out more, simply click the link below and join our Insider Club absolutely free. But there is more you can and should do. Build up several streams of income. More and more people realize that they have to take their future in their own hands, but they don't know how and where to start. We from Compact offer our Insider Club members unique opportunities. Strengthen your financial muscle and get the edge. Click the link below. Become part of our free Insider Club. No financial obligations. But there's one important thing you have to know. You have to become active. So do it now. Become active and see you on the other side.